I'm Louise Kennedy, the founder of Oculus HR. Welcome to Mind the Generation Gap. I've spent my career helping people work better together. And right now is such an interesting time to be in business. We're seeing a real shift in the workplace as different generations start to bring new ideas and also opportunities. In this series, I want to look past the headlines and also explore how that we can bridge the generation gap. I'll be talking to business owners, educators and the next generation to hear their stories and really find out how we can work together to future-proof our businesses. Okay, thanks very much for coming along today. We've got Stephen Gallagher, who's the Commercial Vice President of British Esports Federation. So as a starting point, you want to just give us a little bit of information about who you are, what you do, and then a little bit about esports. I think would be really interesting.
So thank you for having us today. I really appreciate the invite. And I'm Stephen Gallagher. I was actually in broadcast and film for quite a long time.
Okay.
It was probably about 25 years. In some pretty major studios, working on some big projects, which was very, very interesting. Then an opportunity.
Was that always behind the scenes,
It was from a marketing
Right.
point of view, but it's the sort of environment where it's till the job's done. So I might have been there in a marketing director capacity, but if the LED wall had a problem and it needed more hands than what were available, then you would just naturally get involved with it.
Okay.
So it is an industry where I think you just learn that everyone chips in and it's till the job's done. So you might not finish at 5. You might be there until the next morning, but you're going to get it done one way or the other. Yeah.
Okay.
So an opportunity, my story, opportunity arose for me to join British Esports Federation in November last year. And it was just one of those moments in life where you think this is an opportunity that you just cannot refuse. The organisation has been around now for 10 years.
Right.
So we are the British Esports Federation, so we're a national body. A bit like you might consider the FA is in football. British Esports Federation is that for competitive video gaming. So we represent Great Britain on the international scene. We contribute towards things like safe gaming, but there's a huge part of our purpose and why we're here to deliver education and create opportunities for young people.
Right, okay. So it's quite a broad field of everything that's been done there.
It's
Huge.
And we've got lots of facilities in Sunderland, which...
I was going to say, so are you primarily based in Sunderland?
Yeah. So I'm based at the Place, which is actually the NEPC, which is the National Esports Performance Campus.
Yeah.
So we have lots of interesting things going on there. There's lots of education trips. So lots of schools and colleges bring groups of students to introduce them to, the learning opportunities that exist around esports. Some of them will already be delivering some kind of esports training, often with our support. And they'll come as like an education trip. So they'll spend, sometimes they come for the day, sometimes they'll stay over in some of our beautiful houses that we've got.
I was going to say, because that is something else you've got some houses at the back of the place, haven't you, where you accommodate obviously students, but also the gamers that travel from around the world?
Yeah, the gamers, I mean, these guys, people might not realise in Sunderland that they've got the National Esports Performance Campus on the doorstep.
I don't think they do.
No.
Being from Sunderland and having been there a few weeks ago and then talking to people don't know enough about it, so it's...
Yeah, so that's part of my role to try and share some information about what we're doing. Historically, the site has existed to deliver the education. So Sunderland College are a resident in the building. They deliver a BTEC in esports, which is quite an interesting course that delivers all sorts of really useful things, employability skills for young people, which I'm sure we'll come on to a bit. The site is also used by elite teams. So within esports, so the difference, I guess, if I explain the difference between esports and gaming. So all of us have probably been a gamer at some point, sitting by yourself on a train, and maybe you can play a game against the computer just by yourself on your phone. So that would be gaming. The difference between that and esports is organised competitive gaming, and that's where we would come in. So And I'm sure that everyone will have heard something on the news of some huge prize money that can be won by the very, very good teams.
Yeah.
And those teams come to Sunderland. They'll travel from far and wide, from the US, from the Middle East, from within Europe, and they'll come to us to use the facilities that we've got in Sunderland. And so by nature, these individuals can be separated by distance.
Okay.
So they use our site as an opportunity to physically come together, where they'll come with a team manager, a nutritionalist, because the way we approach esports is as if it were an elite sport.
Right, okay.
In fact, just in the last few weeks, we just announced that now Companies House has a dedicated esports SIC code.
Right.
So there's a small group of SIC codes, so that if you operate in a business that's within esports, those SIC codes exist now, and they sit under the overall sports category. The elite teams come to us, and they'll spend time physically together, which is important because it supports maybe better communication. They'll plan how they're going to approach the tournament that they're often training for. They'll use our boot camp rooms to practice, to strategize, to do that team bonding, and then they'll go off to compete and hopefully win, I guess, major prize money.
Major money, isn't it? Yeah. Major money. And you're also doing a facility at another part in Sunderland, aren't you? Doing kind of an auditorium?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm safe to let you know that we're actually going to call this the British Arena.
Okay.
So I think that final decision was made just before I came here today.
Okay.
So it's hot
off the press.
So people in Sunderland are going to have the British Arena. So the British Arena, it's not being called the British Esports Arena. It is very definitely the British Arena, because whilst our core use of the space is to do with esports, so we will bring major tournaments to that arena, and with that there'll be lots of wider economic benefits to the city, because people will be needing places to stay. They'll be eating in the city. They'll be travelling to visit different things. It'll be
how many people would come to something like that?
So probably the fire brigade are going to end up having the final decision on this when we get closer to opening, but we're thinking probably about 500 within the arena. And then the number of eyeballs globally that will be on the live stream, the broadcast, would be measured in tens of thousands.
Right, okay. So it's a significant industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. There's the industry, actually, the esports industry for the UK actually generates more income per year than the recorded music and the film industry together.
Does it?
Yes.
And that's just within the UK?
That's just in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's quite phenomenal, isn't it?
It's incredible.
For an industry that people don't know a huge amount about.
I think people have a misconception that it's kids playing on a computer game and spending too much time in a bedroom.
Yeah.
And I like to offer a different perspective, which is that, yes, there are people that are doing that. And when those young people come to a point in their life where they've got to start thinking about what's next, when you get to the end of secondary education, you're thinking about college, or what does your career look like? What do you want to do? What if we were able to offer those young people an opportunity to study and pick up real valuable employability skills, things like presentation, communication skills, graphic design, how to run a stream. What if we could deliver that knowledge and use the subject that they're already interested in, which is esports, as the vehicle to deliver that?
To deliver the knowledge. And so that's what you're really facilitating now at the site that you've got at the place, where you're bringing colleges. Well, you said Sunderland College are based there, but you're obviously bringing a lot of different students that are coming through your doors. Are you seeing those as being a particular age range? Are they genuinely people that are just coming out of school, or are they coming out of college, or what age range of people have you got coming through?
So I think we're squarely within the Gen Z category. So it can be school leavers who might then go on to study with Sunderland College, who offer a BTEC in esports.
Right.
I was just speaking with some of the guys from the college recently, and I think it would be an interesting experiment if they were brave enough to do it. that on the open nights, I'm sure we've all been with a young person to one of these college open nights, and there's all of the different subject leaders are there selling their course and the benefits of it. And everyone gets excited about you get a little brochure when you go through, and they've got the title of the course, and then it'll give you a little intro, and then you go off to that room to have a look to see what they're doing. And I think it would be a really interesting experiment if you were to communicate to parents that are in the room what the courses would deliver, what skills the young people are going to leave the course with that they didn't start the course with, that would increase their opportunities for employment.
Yeah.
And then once they've made the decision on whether or not that course looks interesting, then tell them what the title of the course was. And I think that lots of people would find themselves in the esports room if you did it that way around.
I think it's quite interesting. My kids are 21 and nearly 18, and I remember going into secondary school with a 21-year-old when he was just starting, so 10 years ago, and them saying in 10 years' time there'll be jobs that be out that he'll be applying for that we will never have heard of. And that's exactly where we're at with this, isn't it? These jobs 10 years ago weren't really being spoken about. But actually, and I just said when we came in there, that it's about parents understanding it more, isn't it? Because actually, if a parent goes along and it's, gaming, are you really going to say, yeah, that's what you need to do for your A-level or a BTEC in? But actually, once that exposure's done around what your skill set it could be and the exposure that it could have, and, it's an interesting way to be able to do it. It would be interesting just as a research, fact-finding type thing, wouldn't it?
Because I think we get caught up on what the subject title is.
Definitely do.
And really what we should be thinking about as parents, I'm sure, is what are the skills that my young person's going to develop whilst they're on this programme.
Yeah.
And the valuable skills that esports is able to deliver when we work with the colleges and schools. And it's not always, you actually asked about the age range. We were just with some schools in Sunderland, some junior schools in Sunderland just last week, who I think their story is probably not too dissimilar to a lot of junior schools, where cash is often tight. There's other circumstances that impact whether or not students turn up for school, and the influence that their parents have on whether or not the children come to school as well. And esports actually can be used to provide a togetherness, a community, because there's 9 in 10 of Gen Z actually already gamers or into esports in some way, shape or form. Now, that often will pick up actually the parents off of the children that are now in those junior school settings. And we're looking at ways to introduce esports into those schools to create a stronger engagement with the parents, but also with the students as well. So I find that that's quite an interesting, and it broadens the age group that we've typically worked with, because it takes in a much younger group of people. But it was really heartwarming just last week to be, speaking with, I guess, the head and the decision makers in the school setting, and then given the tour around and to see the amazing technology that this particular school have. And it doesn't seem to line up with the challenges that they've got around how are they appealing to parents to send their children to that particular school.
Yeah.
And esports is becoming quite a powerful lever the school can pull to deliver lots of good engagement, lots of positive education, but actually also engage with the parents who are the decision makers on which school their kids go to. Yeah. So
do you think that in the future that would turn into kind of one of the local schools was always seen to be, was deemed as being kind of a school for sports, or, a school for science, or, sometimes that's the way the secondary schools, it's where they're headed them up sometimes. Do you think that you can see a time in the future where actually it would be recognised that we do esports at this school, and that would be...
I don't see why not.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that one of the local schools, Weymouth, where my kids went to, they had a football academy, and one of the drivers was that, people wanted the children to go there as opposed to other ones, because there was this academy that was ran, during school time, outside school time, but it was about enhancing them.
I think there's absolutely no reason that it couldn't move in that direction. I was speaking with there was a local authority recently published something whereby they were talking about youth unemployment and the cost issue that creates around benefit claims, and they are actively looking at what can they do about it? You know, it's reached a point, it's in mainstream press right now. Youth unemployment has become a bit of a pandemic. And people are really looking hard into the mirror and questioning what can they do about it? How do you engage with people? And I think what we are able to do is offer them an opportunity to say, well, if 9 in 10 of those people are also the people that are the unemployed guys that are out there and that are not engaged, well, why don't we try and use the esports, which we know that they're already interested in, to get engaged, to bring them in and use it wouldn't be a BTEC level course, but it would be some kind of condensed education package that teases out the core employment ready skills that we could deliver to those people that currently are not in a job, to give them a better opportunity to sort of get out of a benefit system, which becomes a bit of a trap.
Yeah, once they're in, it's difficult to get back out of, isn't it? Yeah. So
I think we're able to impact both a much younger audience and actually probably a slightly older audience, and in very different ways.
Yeah. And how do you think you would be able to do that? Do you think that has to go through from a school point of view or a college/university point of view? It's kind of all of those touch points, isn't it? I
think it's going to be a multi-pronged approach to what we do, and at the moment we are speaking with the schools, local authorities. We speak with governments, not just our own government, but we are often invited, and some of my colleagues travel around the world speaking with other governments in different places to help them to access the knowledge that we've created over the last 10 years. And it's not just about sort of turning up and saying, okay, there's a room, let's put a bunch of computers in there and play games. There's the British Esports Federation has actually developed a curriculum. So there's lots of different levels of the curriculum. So it's not a one size fits all. It's about coming up with a bespoke turnkey solution based on what your requirements are. So whether you might be a junior school, you might be a local authority that has a different problem, you might be an elite team. The education pathway exists so that we can work and engage with you in the best way.
And you want to just explain a little bit about what that education part of it is, as in, I know when we've spoken, you've mentioned it's potentially about marketing, it's about setting these type of scenes at where we are. It's about, do you want to explain a little bit about that? Because it's still, we're still just using the word of esports, but actually, what does that look like, and what are the skills that potentially could come from learning in those areas be, really?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And people think about the jobs and the size of the industry, and I sort of dropped in about the size of the industry compared with the film industry and recorded music. And people think about, well, what are the jobs in esports? And I would encourage people to think in more broad terms than that, because I think, yes, there are jobs in esports. I have one. I'm not a gamer. I'm not into esports myself. I see it through quite a different lens. So yes, there are jobs there, and they can be very rewarding jobs. But I think that there's actually a great opportunity in all of our businesses. Often we have our own marketing team, or maybe we engage with a creative agency that will support our business. Now, what if esports is able to deliver young people the skills that they would need to if I think about something that we do each Wednesday is a student broadcast in Sunderland. So students that are currently studying the esports BTEC, they will be in an organised esports league. But on the Wednesday, there's the broadcast whereby there will be a game that gets broadcast. So it'll be streamed out to quite a large audience online. And the students are actually taken through the education steps to understand what needs to go into that broadcast. So somebody it goes beyond just the gamers. It goes beyond the guys with the controller in the hand playing the game, because there will be somebody that's taking care of the microphones. Somebody is looking at how do we mix the video feeds from the multiple cameras that are used. Someone's worried about the lighting, the green screen, and if you overlight it, then you get a thing called green spill, which then spoils the magic of the virtual set that we're sitting in. So they actually do go through an education pathway where they pick up all of those skills. If we just take that as one example, And so I think that the job opportunities are a lot broader than just within the esports industry, because all of our businesses need a salesperson that is confident to communicate, to stand in front of a room and speak to a group of people, to have put together a compelling PowerPoint presentation. You might be asked to do something like this and get some content out so we can communicate with an online audience and build the trust that these types of productions help to build with those viewers, and reach new customers, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? We want to try and reach as many customers as possible and bring them to our door.
Yeah. And it's interesting, as you say, that, when we talk about parents not potentially knowing, it's also about employees not knowing about what that skill set is. If you just were to see, I don't know, one line on a CV and just said BTEC and esports, someone of my age, your age, would probably be looking at that thinking, all right, you wouldn't necessarily understand the whole context of it, and it's how to, there's like a bigger education piece across the board, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. And, I've stood in front of rooms of people recently and explained about the different skills that people studying esports actually develop, and challenged the people in the room to consider, actually, if that young person who, let's face it, probably doesn't have a huge volume of work experience that they can refer to. So if they're sat in front of you as a hiring manager and somebody explains, probably very passionately, that they've been involved with esports, and they might tell you about their experience playing a particular game and what that looked like. I think as the generation above, I think we've probably got to sort of own some of the responsibility ourselves.
Definitely.
And understand what Gen Z are telling us, because they're communicating in their way passionately that they've been involved with esports. Maybe what we should be exploring is, that's a signal to us. We know that means that they've potentially been involved with things that would be a great asset to our logistics team, our marketing team, our sales force.
Yeah.
And once we take that responsibility and understand what esports is actually delivering, I think then we will find better opportunities to engage with Gen Z, and all of our organisations would be better for it, I would say. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. And I think, how do you think the communication aspect of that, because obviously you're therefore dealing with Gen Z, probably majority of the people that you're dealing with isn't it? And so how do you feel as though, and it's probably difficult because there's not a comparison there to really make, but that communication element to them on a day-to-day basis, how do you feel like that takes shape?
With
Gen Z, with kind of the people that are coming in, who are, because, ultimately this information that we're finding is that, they need to be communicated to differently to what other people, and it's about clear, it's transparent. It's how do you feel like that communication part goes in?
I think that there's work to be done. I think, are we communicating? We heard some examples from, I think it was some colleagues at Nissan recently about their experience with a particular campaign to bring in a cohort of young people into their organisation, and I think the channel that we choose to communicate on, we've got to think about about our audience. Content like this that we're creating today might be fantastic for LinkedIn, but is that necessarily where Gen Z are going to be hanging out?
Yeah,
maybe it's not. Maybe some of them will, but I think we need to understand our audience the same as we would expect that we do about our customers.
Yeah.
And consider, where are they going to be? How should we communicate? Gen Z do communicate differently. I think they're a lot more short and snappy, to the point. I don't think you're likely to get a very long-winded message from somebody that's of that age group.
Yeah.
And I think that we probably need to just understand where they're at and get our heads into that space.
Yeah. And that was going to be the next question, because obviously there's the point where we deal with different managers in different workplaces all the time that actually, they're not great managers, and trying to be nicely said, they're not always great managers. They're kind of what are sometimes classed as an accidental manager. They've ended up in that role and they don't really know how to communicate. So there is an area of responsibility for employers to make sure that their managers know how to manage A, correctly, but B, also manage Gen Z as well. Isn't there? There's some work that needs to be done across the board.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's some. I think probably most people end up being in a management role, not because they didn't have some great attribute that meant, yes, you're definitely going to be a great manager. I think they were probably good at being the salesperson or the whatever bit of the business they were contributing to. They did well there.
Yeah.
And ended up promoted into a role where suddenly now you've got to worry about other people and all of those skills, other skills that you suddenly then need that are beyond the delivery of a particular job.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I think, I've said before that I'm almost tempted to say the soft skills that you need to be a manager, but I've also been quoted before of being critical of people saying soft skills, because I think soft skills are actually, I think when people say soft skills, what they mean is the stuff that exists that is outside of the core. So if somebody's with us or with a local school or college, and you went up and down the country studying esports, I think we would maybe have caught ourselves in the past. It's certainly been described as soft skills development when we talk about, this person studied esports, but now they can do a presentation, or now they understand enough about network bandwidth and firewalls and things so they can get a live stream out, or they can do vision mixing and audio mixing. Those aren't soft skills at all. So I suppose the same should be said about managers.
Yeah.
And those soft skills. They're not actually soft skills in how you know, what do you do when someone comes to you with, people have lives outside of work, don't they?
Yeah.
Those aren't soft skills, actually, and knowing what you're going to do about that.
And it's just learning about how to communicate properly, isn't it? I think one of the ways that I always look, we've done some work around kind of domestic abuse and kind of suicide prevention, and actually sometimes it's the people in the workplace are going to their managers to express there's a concern at home or with their personal situation. And that manager is crucial because actually they're the people that can make a difference on the next step of what happens to that individual, isn't it? So it's really important for employees to educate their managers to make sure that difficult conversations aren't necessarily difficult and that there's a good flow of communication that happens.
It's safeguarding.
Yeah.
And safeguarding doesn't necessarily only have to happen with young people. I think as managers, we definitely need to be aware of what people are telling us.
Yeah.
And I think being able to read the room.
Yeah, read the signs.
Yeah. And safeguarding is a really important aspect of what we do.
Yeah.
We want people to understand, there are some things online and that maybe we shouldn't be doing. The things are out there that are dangerous, and do people always recognise what those signs are?
What the danger signs are. Yeah.
And it's not always obvious. So there's a huge part of what we do, and we actually there's some training programs that are freely available. You don't have to engage with British Esports Federation financially to access some of our safeguarding program material that exists. So if somebody was out there as an employer and maybe they've heard something that might make them think that there's an opportunity that they could engage better with Gen Z if they were to better understand esports and what that entails, then they could go to the website right now and they could access that safeguarding program freely, and I would encourage them to take a look at that.
Yeah. Just showing people that there's opportunities of ways of doing things, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we talked about from an employer point of view. What advice is esports given to the Gen Z generation who are going out to get work or taking the next steps? What advice is being used there?
Yeah, this is something that's an active subject that we've been speaking about, and what we're doing is we are looking at, we understand all of those things all of those soft skills that those people pick up as they study esports, but we are working to help them to actually better communicate to our generation when they're sat in front of the hiring manager, when they're speaking to people about, well, what have you been doing? It's fantastic to be so passionate about esports, and a lot of these guys are, but we're working really hard to help them to understand what our generation needs to hear.
Okay.
So are they doing that self-looking inwards piece and understanding, well, actually it's really valuable to understand how to produce graphics for an online presentation, because that's the sort of stuff that they really have learned while they've been with us. But would they have naturally have understood that that's something that a potential employer looking for.
Yeah.
So we're working with certainly people like Sunderland College to actively work with the students towards the end of the BTEC program, so that they actually really they can stand confidently in front of a hiring manager and communicate, the piece of their education pathway that's right for that job that they're there to speak about. So, and that's something that I feel quite passionate that we should be doing and continuing to do and to develop further, because it's all about creating. It's not just about a fantastic experience in the moment. It's about what does that lead to.
Yeah, what's the future look like for them, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think when you've got a young person who has and some of these guys, I probably can't overstate it enough how strong their passion is for what they do in esports. And it would be a personal goal of mine if all of those young people were able to confidently explain the passion for the esports, but actually extrapolate then what the detail is that sits behind that would mean something to you or I if they were speaking to us about potentially joining our company.
Yeah, because it's quite difficult to get them to articulate, I'm generalising there, but getting the articulation of what it is that they've done, what benefit it's been, and how that benefits their experience, isn't it? To be able to put that across to an employer, to a parent, to anybody.
And I think you could get caught up in quite broad brush statements because everyone's individual, and of course they're not all the same. Some will absolutely recognise, well, I know how to do, whatever piece of the jigsaw is that they know how to do, and they'll be able to communicate that very well and sell themselves. But we are doing work to ensure that everybody that comes through the programme understands what it is that they've picked up and what have they become very good at that would be valuable to their employer. So definitely working with them to sell themselves.
Do you think they're aware? Do you think Gen Z are aware that they are of a different generation? That's just a personal opinion, really, I suppose.
That's a good question. My now 16-year-old definitely would recognise that, just different, built differently for sure. Yeah, I think that they do. I think we're living in different times. I think that whenever I left school, you would get to kind of 15, 16, and then most people would hop off and leave education altogether and you go get a job, right? Or you might, some people I think at the time might have been getting like a YTS kind of vocational placement.
On about £29 a week.
Yeah, something like that. Said by someone that sounds like she's got lots of experience with it.
It was only a threat from her parents. I wasn't allowed to do one.
So I think that they probably do recognise that they are different in their approach. They're not different.
But they're living in a different time, aren't they? When we talk about
they're the first generation that sort of grew up with the internet.
Yeah.
The people that ultimately get to watch this conversation, most of us wouldn't have grown up with the internet because it didn't exist. Mobile phones weren't around. That's just not the case now. So they were living in a much more immediate environment. I think that we probably, as an organisation, need to consider this as well when we're trying to sell things. We want to find customers. There will be now. Gen Z is now among us. They're in the workplace. Yeah. There will be your customers, current and in the future. So if we know that they've grown up in an environment where everything's immediate, if they want to know, I don't know, how do you make something? What happens in Rome? They punch a question into Google and they've got the answer immediately. Yeah. We didn't have that. No. So, and I think that immediate access to information and bite-sized information, I think that maybe there's an opportunity for us to learn from that. And when we're producing content, and if we're trying to appeal to Gen Z, then think about, well, what is it that they expect from us? Yeah. Do they want a 75-page white paper, or do they want a very short quote and a little video clip? Yeah,
2-minute video clip as opposed to something that they have to invest the time in. Yeah, I think all really relevant. I think it's really important that's the change, isn't it? That's where learning to communicate differently is really important from the Gen Z point of view, isn't it? And how we take it forward. Do you want to, obviously you mentioned about the arena and the amount of people that would be there at the time who's going to watch the esports take place, but what else is the arena going to be used for? Because it's going to be in quite a crucial place in Sunderland area, so what will happen in there the rest of the time?
Yeah, it's in a really interesting place, right opposite the Stadium of Light.
Right opposite the Stadium of Light.
So we have some...
Not far into the town centre now with our new footbridge.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
It's really opened that side of the city up.
It definitely has.
And the arena's, it's going to be a really proud moment, I think, for us, but certainly for people in the city, I hope, that they've got this national arena. But we're going to do a lot more than just esports in there. Esports isn't going to feature in the title, and it's actually going to be deliberately a multi-purpose venue. Mm-hmm. So if your brand wanted to use it as a product activation space or for a private function, it's entirely available to you to do that. And our aspirations for what we do with it is to fill it with interesting activities, things going, music events, comedy nights. There's going to be a lot of things going on in there that sit outside of the esports side of the business that we operate.
So people will be able to come along, hire it and use it however they want to be able to use it from a business point of view.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're going to have a number of different spaces in there. There's going to be, for our purposes, there's going to be a broadcast suite there so that we can broadcast the esports activity, but that might also create other opportunities for others. Maybe the college or the local schools that we deal with might have an opportunity to use some of that space. But we're also going to have a general purpose kind of a function room, if you will. Mm-hmm. And in there, you could use it for a private event, whether it's a corporate event or something personal. But I'm looking forward to bringing in some really interesting music. Yeah. I think that would be fantastic to add to the match day experience and open the doors up to lots of the guys that are already in town for the football. And then obviously we've got quite a lot of land outside, so what we will do there could be quite interesting, right? Okay. Particularly around match days.
But it's a perfect opportunity, isn't it? You've got 40,000 people that are attending in that area, so
incredible, isn't it?
Why would you not use it, isn't it? Yeah, so it'd be brilliant. So when's that expected to open? Is that?
Oh, now there's a question.
Nobody likes to put a date on anything, do they? But midway through the year, maybe, so a little bit later.
So if we were to hit the 22nd of August, not that we're being very specific about it, but if we want to do that, it would tie in nicely with the first game of the season.
Okay. So at least it's an aim. The bridge didn't happen quite on the aim of last year.
No,
and delayed, but
and to be fair, the arena's been in some form of progress for quite a long time. But if anyone's at the stadium and they're passing by, you'll see right now that there's construction work is happening. Yeah. We've got it's the original. It was an Audi car dealership.
Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm.
And so it's a fair size building as it stands, but we're doubling the footprint of the building. Yeah. So anybody that's sort of taking a keen interest in what we're doing, if they pass by and peep through the railings, you'll see probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you'll see the steelwork arrive, and the other half of the building will very, very quickly appear.
From there. I did drive past yesterday. I did notice the construction work going on.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I hope they're all busy.
Well, it was a Sunday. It was a match. So I think one of the last questions I want to ask, and this is about you, how would you value success?
How to value success?
Or like, what do you believe is success?
Personally, personally it's about, I think, being able to provide for my family. Okay. And in order to do that, I think that you've got to be committed to whatever you do in your work and life. That creates opportunities for not just you, but actually it's for those people that you've got back home. So yeah, for me it's definitely about creating opportunities and good stuff for the little people at home. Yeah,
to be able to look after them. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. I really appreciate your time today. It's been great to be able to talk. Really good to understand more about the British Esports, and hopefully people listening will kind of really benefit from that as well. But then also the work that you're doing with all different levels of people, but the Gen Z that are coming through as well, because it is providing a foundation and hopefully the employability skills to be able to take forward as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is all for this episode of Mind the Generation Gap. I hope you found the conversation as valuable as I did, and it's clear when we actually take the time to listen, the gap between us doesn't feel anywhere near as wide.